I feel sometimes like I should preface every sermon, every message. Well, Lori would probably say everything you say. I should preface that with, this is what I think, and I'd like you to think about it. I try to remind people with the message each week that, of course, I'm not trying to tell you what to think. Of course not. I'm also not trying to tell you how smart I am. That would not work. What I'm trying to do is tell you what I think about something in a way that hopefully might get you to think about it, might inspire you to wonder more about it, might inspire you to learn more about it even. You'll find this hard to believe, but I don't know everything. And I did go to seminary, which is great. It's always important. And it's just that doesn't make me the absolute authority on anything to do with the Bible. Professors at university who've studied the Bible for 60 years aren't absolute authorities on it. So when somebody stands up and says, this is what it means, you should probably think about that. And there's lots that you should take into consideration there, not just their words, also who they are, their actions, whether, particularly if they're talking about the Bible, whether they actually live that out. I'm going to come back to that in a second. But the point is that you can't just stand up and you can't just hold up the book and act like that gives you some... Here, let me do it for you. Hang on. See, it doesn't work. This is very heavy. Oh, I get it. I have to be standing in front of the church. Yes, I know. And we all probably looked at that and thought, no, that does not give him any authority whatsoever. The thing is, pastors do it every week. I didn't realize this until I started to think about it again this week, and it was because of this story. I'm getting to that in a second. I didn't really notice this until I started to think about it this week. I wasn't going to do that. When I stepped down here, I was looking for a Bible, and I noticed that there wasn't one here. Handy. It's out in the hallway there. But the thing is, have you noticed how there are some religious leaders, let's say religious leaders, who in their preaching, invariably, when it comes to a biblical passage, they pick up the book and read it to you from the book. People who are quite proud to tell you they practically have the entire Bible memorized, and they certainly would know the verses that they were preaching about that morning. Pick up the book and read it to you. Why? How do you not know what that verse is? I have a terrible memory, but even I can tell you what the key message of this morning's gospel passage was. I know it wasn't a long one, I know, but I can still tell you. I don't need the book in my hand, is my point. Jesus sure didn't need to have a copy of the law in his hand to tell you what the most important part of it is. In fact, the thing is, we hear this story, and Jesus answered that question in the context of the leaders of the temple were trying to trick him into saying something they could use against him. They've already asked him questions. We talked about this the last few weeks. They've already asked him questions about authority, about whether or not they should pay taxes. They're trying to trick him. And then they bring out the big guns. This is the last one, right? The last question. They bring out the big guns, a lawyer. And the lawyer asks this question. And if you've read through this whole story, surely at this point you're going, seriously? That's the question you're going with? That's your big question? Because that was a popular topic. It still is. What is the greatest commandment? People were talking about it all the time. And of course, the go-to answer is going to be, love God. How could that not be the number one? Except wait, it's not the only one. And the thing is, that's not new either. Jesus is actually quoting Deuteronomy and Leviticus in his answer. He didn't just kind of go, let's give them something different this time. He gave them Deuteronomy and Leviticus in his answer. See, it's not the question that's the test, it's the answer. And the answer is the most important things, not just in the law, but in fact, it is the core, the heart of Jesus' message, right? Love is at the heart of Jesus' message. Love God, love your neighbor. That seems pretty straightforward, except it's not, because it's complicated. And it's not your neighbor, by the way, that's complicating it, so don't be blaming your neighbors. Love God with all your heart and mind and soul. With all that you are, love God. So the language Jesus is going to use, and the language we're going to use because it's Jesus, is love God with all your heart and mind and soul. But if God is love, if God is the life-giving energy of the universe, if God is the fabric that connects us all, if God is in all things, you and I included, and all creation, the answer is essentially love all with all that you are. Make that connection. Make that connection that God is in all and in you. Put those things together. Live out that is in you. By the way, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. You can't love your neighbor unless you love yourself first. And you certainly can't love yourself and not love your neighbor, can you? Anybody want to answer that? It's a trick question. Could have been a lawyer. My brother is laughing right now. He is a lawyer. Anyway, the point is it's not just about loving God with all that you are, having God at the heart of who you are. It's about sharing that love, not just with your neighbor, but with you. You can't have that love inside you and not love you just as you are. And that's where sometimes I think we lose track of things and we mistake, I can be better for I'm not good. And instead of trying to be better, we think we're not good enough. Because being better is growing, learning, living. And that is not the same as thinking you're not good enough or you're not able or I failed at this. And when it comes to Jesus, certainly when we are challenged to live as Jesus, quite often our go-to answer is, well, that's Jesus. I'm not good enough. I can't do, that's Jesus. Jesus is divine. I can't, but so are you. And that's the point of the life of Jesus. We get wrapped up in the sacrifice part. We get wrapped up in the words of the teachings and everything. But the point of the living, the life of Jesus, is to show us that this is us too. To show us what we're capable of. Not what we can't achieve, but what we're capable of. We are fully 100% capable of loving God with all our heart and mind and soul and loving our neighbor as ourselves. We are absolutely capable of it. We also have choices that we make, but we are absolutely fully capable of it. The answer is simple. The doing of it is much, much, much more complex. And it's not just that it's complex because, well, other things are happening in the world and other people are making choices and things. It's because we don't all come to that the same way. We don't all come to God even the same way. But the thing is, and this is what's so critical about with all your heart and mind and soul, and that you love you yourself before you love your neighbor, is you are the critical part of this. It's not about what God's going to do in the big picture, or how God's going to do this or God's going to take care of that for you. It's not about expectations you might have of your neighbor, or worse, judgments you might place on your neighbor. It's about you loving God with all your heart and mind and soul. And the second is like unto it. And here's the only moment where I know I'm always saying Jesus is not an either or. Jesus is an and. And, by the way, he does say and, but he does appear to prioritize things here. Love God with all your heart and mind and soul. And the second is like unto it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, but of course it makes sense though, doesn't it? And it's not just about following the law. You know, number one commandment, you shall have no other gods before me. How can you love yourself and your neighbor if you have not already engaged that love that is within you, that image of God? If you have not reached in, I think I mean reached in, to find that godliness that is in you, that connection to the great mystery which is God and love and the universe that is in you. How do you reach out from there if you haven't already found that? However you know God, whatever language you want to use, love with all your heart and mind and soul. If that is you, if you are in touch with that in you, you will love you. And in loving you, share that with your neighbors. Oh man, that sounds simple. It's not. It's hard. Of course it is. We were so bad at it for so long. Well, we still are. But we have an example. We have a life that shows us what living love is all about. We have Jesus. God didn't send us more words. Okay, God sent us more words. God inspired a lot of words. I'd hold that up again, but it's honestly heavy. We have a lot of words. But if we don't have the story, if we don't have the life of Jesus, if we don't understand that the point of Jesus is how Jesus lived, not just the words, but how Jesus lived, how will we know how to live? Because it's not behavior. It's not like following instructions. It's living like Jesus. That's why we need to know the stories as well as the words. We need to reach into the heart of the law rather than just go with the words. We need more than words. I know that's a song, but we truly do. We need the life of Jesus. And we need that life to be the life that we live. We need to realize that Jesus is not just something amazing that we'll never be able to get anywhere near, but to realize that Jesus is actually within us and beside us and around us. And we are part of that. It is not easy. But we have these stories that show us a way. And when we love God with all our heart and mind and soul, we know we are connected to something that is with us on that journey. It might take some weird left turns. It'll come back. And we always know God is with us. we are not alone.